Welcome everyone, this is Ondas Restart, and this time I want to question whether it's safe to expect a major general Nintendo Direct in the month of September in this year of 2022. A lot of us expected some sort of major news last June when we normally have an E3 and also a major Direct, and that didn't happen. So even though we normally get a major Direct of some sort every year, at least during the Switch era in September, given what just happened this summer, is it safe to expect a September Direct? Well, that's what we're focusing on today. Now before we jump into things, let me first very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. Please check it all out. It's linked in the description below. And if you want to like the video or subscribe or join as a member, that would also be greatly appreciated as well. But let's jump into this here. So, I remember when we got news that E3 was cancelled. We had a few different discussions here on the channel, and I tried to play the optimist, and I tried to hope that Nintendo would still have some sort of major Direct around that time, because there was a need. There was a need to talk about particular games to come out throughout the summer, and the fall, and eventually the holidays, so they needed to give us that information. And given that we still got a Direct every year but the pandemic year of 2020, when it initially sort of broke out and took over everything, it seemed reasonable to expect some major Direct of some sort. Of course, during those discussions it was also brought up multiple times that because it is Nintendo and they march to the beat of their own drum, they do things in their own way, there is also a strong chance that because E3 is cancelled, they may take that as an opportunity to try things in a different way. And that's kind of what happened. We still got a bevy of news, but it was spread out throughout both June and July and some of August, and maybe there's still a few more of those announcements coming. And we got a Direct Mini, we got a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Direct, we got a Splatoon 3 Direct, all nice things, but not an actual main general Direct. So the takeaway here is this. We may get a major Direct in September, and I think there's a pretty good chance we will, but it's not 100% written. It's not a for sure thing. Nintendo could handle things in a different way. But most importantly, is that even though Nintendo decided to do things in a different way, they still gave us that information, right? We still eventually learned about Wave 2 of the Mario Kart DLC. They waited a lot longer than we expected for it to come out, but it did happen. We still got news on Xenoblade Chronicles 3. We still got news on Splatoon 3. They still gave us a release date for Bayonetta 3 this October. They gave us a release date for Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope. There were a number of quality third-party announcements throughout those months as well. They announced a new eShop Kirby game on top of that. There are things that have happened that we expected all to happen within a major Direct, but it's all come. Now there are still some things that are seemingly vacant. We haven't gotten any sort of big, sort of awesome teases or reveals for next year. This is the kind of thing that we tend to see during a Direct. We didn't see any sort of brand new announcement for another big holiday release for the holidays alongside Pokemon like we normally do. So there are still things that we sort of have come to expect from a major Direct every June time, and we didn't get it this time. So even though we got a lot of information, we didn't get quite everything. And this brings me to the next point here. I think it's still safe to assume that there's probably going to be some sort of information in September. And the reason for that is because let's just take a look at what we know about for next year. The sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is supposed to happen at some point next year. Supposedly spring. I'm assuming that means March, but if there's any internal delays or whatnot, it could come out even later into the year. And beyond that, can't really think of anything else. Now, we do know that we're going to be getting DLC for Mario Kart. We're going to be getting DLC for Splatoon 3. We're going to be getting DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So the DLC coming out for those major games will help things out a little bit. I think it's also reasonable to assume that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will also have DLC coming out after the fact as well, and that will come out throughout next year, and that will also help things. So we'll have DLC from some major games that came out this year, or also Mario Kart, that will give us a bit more content and things to enjoy throughout next year. And then there's also Breath of the Wild too. But that's it. There's no other known major new games that are coming out for the Switch that are being published by Nintendo that we know about for next year. And that's where I think the big difference lies between our expectations for a June Direct and a September Direct. Because going into June, we already knew about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. We already knew about Splatoon 3. We already knew about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We knew of Mario Rabbids and Bayonetta 3 as well. All of those things were slated for 2022. We just didn't have all the specific details, and we eventually got them. Notice that we also got the delay for Breath of the Wild 2 a few months before E3, so Nintendo made it known to us what to sort of expect for the year. They did make us aware. Now, I still have hopes that there may be another announcement or two to close out the year. Now, I'm not saying like a big sort of giant open world game will come out in November alongside Pokemon, but there are the rumors of the Metroid Prime remake. I'm still waiting on details of the release date of that new Kirby game. Those things could happen. That's an eShop release, so they're not major things. But beyond that, we pretty much know what's coming out this year, and that's it. But for next year, we don't know. So with the September Direct, it's possible maybe they give us a release date on that Kirby game. They give us the confirmation of the Metroid Prime remake rumor. If it's true, we'll see. But more importantly, I think that September Direct will serve to, it will highlight things to close out the holidays, but it'll also start to set up things for the opening of next year. They will tell us what we're getting in maybe January or February. Maybe they'll finally confirm when Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out specifically in the year. Maybe we'll get like a March release date. Maybe that will be the beginning of when we start getting proper news for the sequel. Maybe we'll finally get a name reveal. Basically, if we look back to previous years, the September Direct has been used, one, to sort of tie a nice pretty bow on what we know about for games coming out to close the year, but also it's used to set up things for next year, announce and give plans for the early part of the year, and tease a couple other things. So that's the key difference here. We already had a good understanding of what was to come throughout 2022 before E3. But this time around, going into September, we don't have a good understanding of what's to come next year, really at all, beyond just some DLC and Breath of the Wild 2, and we're not even clearly sure of when that's going to happen. So the September Direct makes sense. More so than the June Direct, given that E3 was cancelled and we already knew about a whole bunch of things. But also taking that into consideration, because we've only gotten a few game-specific Directs and the Partner Showcase, which is like a smaller version of a Direct Mini, the space between General Directs is larger now, the gap. We got one in February and we haven't seen one since. So there's an increasingly higher demand to have a General Direct now. It's going to feel a little more fresh. There's going to be a little bit more excitement towards that. And I think there's more reason for Nintendo to think, if we do it this time around, it may prove to be successful. There will be excitement for it. And in general, pun intended, the excitement for General Directs is usually pretty high, but I think now it'll be even greater because we're just a bit starved for a General Direct because we didn't get one during the typical summer time. So coming back to the initial question, the title of the video, is it safe to expect a general Nintendo Direct for the month of September? I think there's more reason to expect big news around the September time than there was in the June time, simply based off of the need to get more information on things that we don't know about. But also, let's still temper expectations somewhat, because Nintendo is a bit random sometimes, and even though we can rely on history to give us a pretty good assessment of what's to come, it's never 100%. There's always little detours or curveballs. That should be an expectation that Nintendo is going to throw us for a bit of a loop, because that's what they do. That all said, probably safe to expect some sort of news in September, because in truth we've been getting news every single month, and I think expecting a September Nintendo Direct isn't a crazy, lofty expectation. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think we're getting a General Direct in September that will start to outline things for the beginning of next year? Or do you think something else? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.